Welcome back to the Circuit Revival, where today we are going to take a look at this Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch Lite. Overall, it's in fairly decent condition. There's a slight scratch on the screen here, which I don't think we'll be able to kind of buff out. It's quite deep. But the rest of the case looks pretty good. It's a no power. We can double check for no SD card. We can check for a game. No game, but it's a no power. But I think I know what the issue is. It's I can see in the port here already that it's absolutely mangled. So I'll just bring the microscope round quickly. And if we just take a look in here, we just focus in, you can see there are 3 pins there rammed up against the edge of the case. Now, I never really know how people manage to do this with ports. I think I've had like a bunch of products in the past, and not once have I ever managed to really destroy a port like that. But we'll get this one open, we'll have a look inside and see if there's anything else. Obviously first thing, we'll get that port swapped out and we'll see if there's anything else wrong with this one. So I'll probably fast forward through this, but we'll get this open and we'll take a look. Okay, so we're down to the board here. So obviously the first thing we need to do is just double check the M92 and BQ side of things, because they're likely to go first. Now, it's not always best to do it whilst the port is on, because if the port is already shorting things, you're going to get kind of slightly mixed results. But there's some caps around the M92 chip, which if they're shorted, it's sort of game over before you begin. So I'll just bring the microscope round, and I'm just going to dash around these with the meter and just double check whether we're all good. Now we'll start off with, I believe it's this capacitor here. If that one shows as shorted, then it's game over to begin with. So I'm just going to put one lead on ground and I'm just going to test both sides, and that is good. That is only bibbing on one side. Nope, so none of those appear to be shorted out. So it looks like we'll just start off with just removing the port. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to lift this up, we're going to add some flux to it, we'll hang it over the edge of the desk, and then we will lift it straight out. So I'll move this all over, I'll just bring in my holders. Okay, so as you can see, we are just over the edge of the table now. And what I'm going to do is put my hot air station to, I believe, 450 and probably about the highest we can go with airspeed. And I'm just going to move the wand around a bit underneath to heat it up. And then I'll come in with my tweezers and I will just lift the port straight up once it's gone. We should start to see these parts here turn sort of like molten when it's all good, and then we do it. So we don't want to lift it up too soon. We want it to be completely loose by the time we lift it up. So I'm going to start just by adding some flux to this, just to help it out. And then what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to prepare a port ready. Then that way I can just swap them straight over, because the heat of the board should still be good. So I'm just going to look for my Switch Lite ports, which I've got some here. I've just got some Switch Lite ports here. So these ones are slightly different to the other ones. They've got like a flatter edge, which you can see just along there, compared to the normal switches that have slightly beveled edge. So to prepare this port, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some solder and I'm going to run it along those pads there. By doing that, it should allow it to connect a bit easier when it comes to actually soldering it on, because the solder is going to want to connect to other solder. So I've got my port, I've got some flux on it, and I'm just going to come in with some solder. I'm just going to run it along each of those. So now you can see that there's solder on all of those pins. When it comes to actually putting it on, it should go on a bit easier. So we'll start just by heating this up, and then we'll come in, take the old port off, we'll get the new port on. So what I'm going to do whilst the board is still hot here is I'm just going to come in with some leaded solder and just add this to the solder that's already on the board. This should help it melt at a slightly lower temperature, which will make putting the new port on a touch easier. So I'm just going to add a bit more flux to this. And then you can see that starting to just come up a bit better. Okay, so I'm just going to clean that up quickly. Just get a bit of isopropyl alcohol on there, and I'm just going to clean up all that excess flux. Not quite sure about the amount of solder on that end pin there. Just need to just apply a touch of flux then, just whilst we try and sort that out. There we go. Okay, that's nice and clean. I'm just going to add a tiny amount of flux to this just for applying the new port. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to come out from underneath, heat it up, and we're just going to drop the new port in place. Okay, that's the swap done. Let's just take a look at these pins. Okay, they look pretty good. Just come in and we'll just do a nudge test on them. So all I'm going to do is just come in with a pair of tweezers and just give each pin a little push. By doing this, this should allow us to work out whether all the pins are connected. So if the ones on the outside are connected, we can be pretty certain the ones on the other side are connected. And that is probably the cleanest port swap I've done for a while now. And then we can take a look just inside. You can see there's not those pins up against the edge. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of a clean up. Actually, what we'll do before we put in the housing is we'll give it a clean, and then we will just plug it into the ammeter and see whether we get a normal boot with it, just in case there's anything else wrong with this. So I'll just get my cotton swab again, some isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to clean this area up. The upside to not using a lot of flux is it doesn't often get too dirty, and it makes it a bit easier to clean up as well. Okay, so what we can do then is, as you can see just here, we have our ammeter. And what we hope to see with this, I believe, is it go 15 volts, jump up to a number, and then jump back down. And I think that would showcase a standard boot. So we'll give this a go in 3, 2, 1. We have nothing. Let's try the other way. Still showing absolutely nothing. Okay, interesting. Okay, so I've just swapped over the ammeter the other way, and we'll try this again. Okay, so we have 15 volts there, but nothing. Let's try flip this over. Okay, that's normal. Do you see what it did there? So if we do that again, if we plug this in, you'll see it went up and then came back down. It's not done it this time. Let's try flip this back over. Yeah, so you see it's gone up, hit a number, and then come back down and started flashing. But we'll just get this back in the chassis. Okay, so I think this is enough now to test this out. So we're back in the chassis. I've connected some of the parts together. So I believe if we plug this in now, if we're all good and the screen is good, we should see the charging symbol on the top here. So in 3, 2, 1. Okay, that looks good. It's gone down, it's gone back up, and we have the charging symbol. Nice. Okay, this is good. This felt like a good fix. Okay, we'll just leave it, see if it just turns on properly, and then we'll get it back together and test it properly. Okay, screen's just come on there. I was a bit worried that it wasn't going to turn on for a second. And screen works. So we've got Paw Patrol, YouTube, Animal Crossing, and that's this on this. Okay, brilliant. So what we'll do then is we'll get this back together and we'll test this properly. So I will just turn this off. We'll just unplug this. And I'll fast forward through this and I'll just get this back together. Back on, we'll just test the button. So we go down to System Settings. We do Test Input Devices. We'll go X. Yep, they're all good. And then if we then test touchscreen. Yep, touchscreen's all good. We'll calibrate control sticks. Yep, that one's all good. And the other one? That's all good too. So that is all up and running. So all I need to do is just get this reset, and that is another fix done. So let's update our score here. That becomes 5-0. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.